Let's go.
Got to keep the stream going, you know?
Impressive.
Yes, absolutely. So how are you, sir? How have you been?
Very good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
nice to see you here, Kevin.
You too, yeah. It's been a little while, I think, since we had you on, right? So,
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about AutoStore. If you haven't heard of AutoStore, where have you been? But give us a little brief overview.
It's amazing, actually, the number of people I meet that still haven't heard of an AutoStore. And,
Yeah.
in general, I think the stat I've heard is about half the people that come to Modex, it's their first time ever coming to Modex. So,
Interesting, yeah.
they're seeing a lot of this stuff here for the first time. But, what's new with AutoStore? We're 1,400 sites globally now. We do about a site per week in North America.
Oh, wow.
So, still catching on like wildfire. We're doing bigger sites than we've ever done. A lot of high throughput applications. We have sites going live with 1,000 robots on a single grid.
1,000 robots?
1,000 robots, multiple
big is
football
that?
fields of bins.
Wow.
We can have over 1 million bins.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, that's
so
a
you're putting
300,000 square foot
300,000,
cube.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, and but that's so much like space utilization and capacity maximization in 300,000 square feet.
Yeah, so
I mean,
a
that's
300,000 foot AutoStore would be like putting floor to floor, wall to wall shelves in a 1.2 million square foot warehouse, which is about as big a shed as you can build in
Wow.
North America.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man, that's staggering. I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a crazy gain. So, I mean, what about on the side of like the technology itself? What's new there?
Yeah, so at the end of 23, we launched the R5 Pro.
Mm-hmm.
So a whole new iteration on the Redline robot. Has a new charging technology, lithium titanate battery, if you're into that kind of technical stuff.
Yeah.
But really what it allows is the robot to charge in much faster. And so we have 1/10 as many chargers. And so we love density, so it means 9 chargers are gone, and that's 18 more grid cells of bins.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
for
that's good.
every 10 robots. So it's a huge space savings, but it's also less charging infrastructure, and the robots are in the game more. So you can get 14% more throughput for each robot just because they're spending less time charging. Now, if you're less than 2 shifts and you have time at night to charge, we still run all day in the Redline robots, but for a lot of customers that are utilizing these systems for 16 plus hours, then they can use the R5 Pro. We still have the Blackline robot, which is for 3 shifts running all the time where it swaps the batteries, but the R5 Pro is going to be a really powerful tool because a lot of people in that 16 to 20 hour sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's so great that you're looking at that and being able to increase that efficiency and get those gains too on more bins and being able to better utilize that space overall, which is kind of the whole, I think, underlying point, right, of AutoStore is being able to get that most space utilization. So I mean, in that regard, right, we're seeing where certainly there's a lot more talk, I think, around ASRS too, especially as people are running out of space, but rent is not decreasing, right? So
Definitely
trying
not.
to figure out how do we get smarter about that. So I mean, how are you seeing more people coming to the show this year, let's say, or just in general that are like looking for that ASRS solution?
Yeah, I think the U.S. is catching up to some of the automation usage in Europe.
Yeah.
And part of that is driven by wage costs and space costs for sure. A lot of people at the show, the last thing they want to do is go to their management and ask for a new building. And meanwhile, the management is always saying, hey, can you take 100 more pallets of inventory?
Yeah.
We're trying to increase our inventory position because that's now a strategic differentiator, right? During COVID, the companies that had the most inventory won the business from their competitors that had been too lean.
Yeah.
And so everybody now is thinking, okay, how do I stock more inventory? They don't always ask the warehouse team if they can fit it. And so it's kind of like...
It just shows up.
It just shows up, stick it somewhere, and I've seen people use every corner of their warehouse available, but at a certain point that's not sustainable, of course. And so a lot of people I've met and talked with the show here are saying, we're being asked to carry a higher inventory position, or we're completely out of space. The last thing we want to do is buy a new building. How can we better utilize the space that we have? Or decrease our footprint maybe and move into a smaller building, or sublease a portion of our building, or make room for manufacturing production or other flows of inventory that and decrease their each storage usage. So we're seeing a lot more of that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you said that some people are looking to actually decrease their footprint. But I imagine if they're decreasing the footprint and moving to like an AutoStore system, then they're probably getting the same capacity, right? That they
Yeah,
had previously.
you could. I mean, your each storage can compress by 4x.
Yeah.
And so it's possible that you could shrink your rent cost using AutoStore or grow. A
Yeah.
lot of people are using it to grow. They're in a good positive cash position. So we see both. But you're right that like density is always a core tenet of ours, and we're still the densest ASRS on the market,
Yeah.
up to 45 feet, which is taller than most American buildings for sure. Even as a lot of new ASRS has come onto the market, and there's different ways of people moving and sorting bins, the AutoStore still stands at the top.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's so interesting to see, and I mean it's fascinating to watch it and watch it do its thing. And I've been in a couple warehouses now that have had AutoStores in place, and it's been interesting to see how they've deployed them and things like that. So tell us a little bit about maybe how AutoStore is kind of pairing with maybe some other solutions, like as you know, from either the decanting side or the picking side, and being able to do some different things there.
Yeah. And we need to get an AutoStore into your warehouse, by the way.
Yeah, sure. I'll take one for free. Sure, no problem.
We'll work on that. That's a good follow-up action.
Yeah.
So when it comes to integrating, I think that's a huge part of our business. Has always been using integrator partners, because an AutoStore by itself is not very useful. You can put just an AutoStore in, but the software needs to connect really tightly to the WMS, so it's in concert with the orders that are coming in and the new receipts. And then there's almost always some type of pallet case flows that need to live alongside each flows. But then there's also a lot of adoption of packaging automation, downstream sortation, and really like decreasing the number of touches in the facility. So the AutoStore can help enable that, but you need a lot of other pieces there so that you can have the carton be touched once off the truck, maybe automatically nowadays with some truck unloading technology, once into the bin. There's some technology towards automating that, but still doing that receive and put away at the same time saves touches right into a bin. And then on the outbound side, if you pre-build the carton or pick directly to the final order tote rather than batch picking, you can make that a one touch on the outbound side and then load the truck, which again can be automated. So we're seeing 4 touches is kind of like the standard path when you're picking orders through an AutoStore, but you could even think of that as being 2 touches in the future, where you're checking the inventory once on the way in, picking it once on the way out, and then you kind of maximize the opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's very interesting. I mean, because it is kind of that central storage system, and it's interesting to see how you can develop these things around it to be able to reduce those touches, like you mentioned. So I'm curious. I mean, you're deep in the robot game, right? So I'm curious, like as you're looking around to your Modex. I mean, obviously AutoStore is the most exciting solution for you, right? But what? Of course. I'm curious, like what other solutions out there are really kind of catching your attention? What's maybe a focus area that's you really have your eyes on?
Yeah, I love this show. Every year you come, it looks more and more like a manufacturing automation show.
Yeah.
But there's more possibilities, more lights out, more different flavors and form factors of robots of all different kinds, whether it's mobile robots or manipulating robots. And you're starting to see like very logistics and supply chain focused robots, which is really cool. If you came to the show 25 years ago, the two would be unrecognizable from each other. So that's really interesting. I think to me, packaging automation is another area where like the U.S. and Canada and North America in general has just been a little bit behind. I think raising freight costs, high sustained fuel prices have pushed companies to think more about how do we make packages smaller and how to give customers a better experience where they get a package that fits the products they have. So we're doing a lot of projects where we're paired with right-sized packaging, whether it's from Pack Size or Ranpak or some of these other interesting packaging automation companies. I think also on the sortation side, sometimes batch picking is the most efficient way to use an ASRS. So we're doing a lot of projects with pouch sorters, with downstream unit sorters of different flavors, and that can help you get leverage on a robotic automation system like an AutoStore, where the bin arrives and you get way more units out of it than discrete picking. Now, I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to discrete order picking. I think there's a lot of value there from reduced touches and just a high quality and high flexibility standpoint, but there are some ways to combine different solutions that get you a really interesting business case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such an interesting thing, like as you said, to see these shows, whether it's ProMat or Modex, like year after year, just like the amount of technology and robots, automation that are just kind of coming out and all these different things. So it's really exciting to be able to see that and appreciate your thoughts on that. I'm curious, as somebody maybe that's thinking about their storage situation or something like that, at what point, what's maybe maybe not the breaking point, because you don't necessarily want to get to your breaking point, but
Yeah.
like what's that point where it's like, okay, this makes sense for me to look at AutoStore ASRS?
Yeah. So if you've run out of space for shelves,
Yeah.
of course, like
Yeah.
you can go vertical, right? And
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody that's thinking of maybe going vertical with a manual pick module to evaluate that against an ASRS technology. Because generally speaking, there's a really strong ROI there. If you're going to go vertical, to do it with an ASRS and not a traditional pick module, which might have been the go-to tool over the last decades. You're right that it's good to make that decision, like figure that out before you're 100% full. Once you're 100% or 110% capacity, it can become very difficult to do a project for anything, let alone an AutoStore. And it's kind of like a puzzle with the one hole. You need at least one space to be able to move things around and continue operating through a project like an ASRS rollout. The other maybe triggers is, when your order complexity is getting beyond where you can train people effectively, they can start and be productive in the same days, then you have too many SKUs, you have too much space, and you're really wasting your valuable labor resources.
Yeah.
So if you're over 1,000 orders a day and 1,000 SKUs, you have enough complexity that you could solve that with a strong ROI using an ASRS.
Interesting.
And so it's a pretty low threshold, actually.
Yeah.
10 pickers doing 1,000 orders.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're in that high growth mode and you don't know where you're going to put the inventory that the business is asking you to do next year, then you're ready to start thinking about this as a growth plan. And you could be completely transformed in 6 months to an ASRS. And that's maybe a bit of a new thing.
Yeah.
People think of an ASR, like an AutoStore, as being a multi-year transformational thing, but it can still be ready. You can decide now and be ready for peak in 2024. And that's not always.
You got that on camera, are you sure?
It's. I want it locked in. That's why I said it here. Yeah, I think people think of maybe AMRs or certain technologies that you can like leave the show with and go and be ready. And really, any type of integrated WMS project is going to take you 6 months because you're going to want to dot the I's and cross the T's. And you can do an AutoStore or other fixed automation like it in 6 months as well.
Interesting.
So we have multiple of our partners that are marketing that here at the show, and we're eager to deliver on those projects. We actually took our own larger warehouse this year, so we have inventory stocked, ready to go, robots, ports, grid, to show up at people's warehouse, be ready for projects, still be ready for peak 2024.
Nice, that's fantastic, and I think that's good because I think, sometimes people come in here trying to figure out what am I going to do this year for peak, right? So the fact that you can get it done by that, I mean, I think is a fantastic thing. So always a pleasure to talk to you here, John, and learn more about AutoStore and just your thoughts on the robotics world in general. So I appreciate you stopping by. If people want to learn more about AutoStore, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, of course, you can check us out at autostoresystem.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. Just connect with me, Jon Schechter on LinkedIn.
Definitely, very insightful post from him, very technical too, which I think is a great thing. So definitely give him a follow. So John,
thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the work you do here at the New Warehouse Podcast. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, have a good rest of the week.